I'm Marcy Houle. I am a wildlife biologist by profession and the author of 8 books. Most of my books are on nature themes of things I have studied, wild prairies, endangered species, and urban biodiversity reserves. I live on a small sheep farm on an island 10 miles from Portland and with my family. And for the last 10 years, I've had the privilege to work with Elizabeth on books that honor getting older and what makes life healthful and meaningful.
And hi, thanks so much for having us today. My name is Elizabeth Eckstrom. I'm Chief of Geriatrics at Oregon Health and Science University, and I've had so much fun bringing to life some of the most important aspects of aging with Marcy through our books. I love to be outdoors and stay active in the beauty of Oregon, and I'm just thrilled that we've had the opportunity to write this book and to talk about all of the wonderful things that we can accomplish and do as we grow into older age.
I think it mostly is about people's fear about getting older. We worry about what might happen. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to think about it. We feel like it's just a downhill spiral filled with loss, filled with frailty. But that's not the way it really is. We've seen so many older people thrive and maintain purpose and well-being into their 80s, 90s, and 100s. And the stories that we were able to collect really helped us understanding that there can be joy and meaning and purpose and positivity in aging. And one thing I've learned is that there's so many great things about getting older. One of the things Elizabeth points out that she can talk about is if you have a positive thoughts about aging, you can live 7.5 more years of life. That's a lot.
And in my practice, I see so many people who have health problems. They lose friends and family. They find themselves isolated and lonely and in pain. And these are all part of normal life. But it's possible to adapt and craft new joy and learn from experience to have an even richer and more beautiful future. Neil Main expresses this really well, and that is how we got the cover picture for our book. He's one of the stories in the book. So we don't want to, try to cover up the things that can go wrong as we age. We don't want to be Pollyannish about it, but we want people to understand that it doesn't have to just be a downhill slide, and there can be riches and rewards and joy and purpose and all of these things as we grow older, and that's why we wrote this book.
The book actually started for me after I had an accident several years ago. I fell, broke both my arms, and became totally disabled and felt useless and unable to perform any of my normal things in life. And I knew, though, I would get better in a few months. But it got me thinking, what if I were older and I couldn't get better? Is this what it means to grow old? Is this what it means to grow frail? The answer is no, there's a better way to age. And I wanted to figure out what that was. And from what we've seen and what I've learned from Elizabeth, there are many amazing adults from 75 to 100 who have struggled in life and found ways to stay joyful and grateful and purposeful.
I can start with this one. There are so many books about aging on the market right now. Obviously, so many people are growing older across the world, and we're having to wrestle with some of the challenges and some of the things that happen to us as we age. So there are a ton of books out there to try to help us out, which is great. And many of those books are very, very well done and useful. I think what stands out about our book is that we've constructed this book with personal stories of some of the most amazing people, and then we've paired them with some of the evidence behind how to have healthy aging, how to thrive, how to continue to have purpose, how to just, be the best person you can be through all of those years. And the other thing that I think is really important for people to understand is that our book is something that one can read at any age. You do not have to be older to read this book. In fact, we strongly encourage younger people to read this book. This book will help guide your journey starting in your 20s, your 30s, your 50s, your 60s, all of the things that we can do when we're younger to prevent decline and frailty when we're older are discussed in this book. So you want to have a healthy diet, and diet matters even in your 20s and 30s. You want to have social engagement. You want to have as high an educational attainment as you possibly can. You want to have a regular daily exercise, and I can't tell you how important that is starting at a very young age. There are so many research studies saying that if you are healthy and exercising well in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, it's going to delay the onset of potential dementia and other late life problems. So we wanted people to understand that really a lot of healthy aging is under our control, and you don't have to leave it to chance whether you're going to be the person who gets dementia or you're going to be the person who becomes frail or loses their independence. So I think that was the big impetus for our book, and that's the reason I think that we really do stand out in telling these stories and really kind of gaining the gaining the ability to be our own advocates and our own champions starting from a very young age. And Marcy, maybe you want to start with one of our favorite stories in the book?
And as you said, there's so many stories, it's so hard to choose just one. And these are the stories that, to me, they have the power to inspire, to invigorate, and to humanize what aging is and the kind of aging we all would like to have. Because the people in the book that I interviewed and tape recorded, they had incredible insights. Lots of them lived through amazing and difficult life experience. We had people who went through the Holocaust and through revolutions and lost all their money, became bankrupt, and faced 4 countries of immigration and racism. Yet they had a resilience that provided them wisdom as they got older, and the secrets. I wanted to know their secrets. And I think I'll start with one of my favorites, as Elizabeth said, is David Berrios. He is 77. He provided an amazing indigenous perspective on aging. He's a Mescalero Apache, and he now acts as a park ranger for Portland's Forest Park as Oregon's Urban Biodiversity Reserve. He grew up away from the reservation when he was young in Chicago, part of the U.S. government's policy at the time of resettlement to indoctrinate Native people to, quote unquote, blend into society. Didn't work that well. But he lived with his grandparents and from them learned about Native ways. And he learned quickly how important elders were to the family, that they were the teachers, they were the knowledge holders. And he also learned the importance of being caring and respectful of your elders. He said he feels so grateful to be a part of this Native community because both elders and young people are held in the highest esteem. So the young and the old, they are the highest in esteem. Young people, as he said, are the purpose for it all. Elders have an obligation to the next generation, especially as we grow older. So I think it was David who helped me understand that we, as we grow older, have a responsibility as elders. Our world is hurting, and elders can hold a really important role, working to benefit the lives of those who come after us. Because the first time in human history, we're living longer than ever before. So as I learned from David, make this time count.
And I would add with one of my favorite stories, I love all the stories, that the story of Rabbi Stamfer, who always said, "Call me Josh," was a 97-year-old man when we interviewed him a few years ago. And he is a practicing rabbi and still teaching, in fact, still teaching via Zoom in Israel. So he's not only teaching locally in his own synagogue, but he's teaching across the world to Israel. And he feels that purpose is the thing that holds our world together. And his teaching is how he finds purpose. And he told us that he doesn't look for happiness for himself. He doesn't think one should try to make oneself happy. Rather, he feels that we should all try to make others happy and bring happiness to other people and bring joy to other people. And when we're able to bring happiness and joy to other people, then we're going to be able to be happy ourselves. That's going to bring our own happiness. And I love that about Josh. I love that about how he thinks, how he works. how he has energy and talent that he wants to continue to share. And I mean, when Marcy met him, and you can read it in the book, she saw this man who was sitting in a wheelchair and had multiple medical issues going on, and she just thought he was going to be frail. And as soon as she walked up to him, his face just lit up, and he gave her this firm handshake. And she saw that this is not a man who is, frail and declining and disappointed in life. This is somebody who's still vibrant and active and engaged. And I think, that really just highlights the value of some of these things that we talk about in the book.
I think for me, it didn't feel like research. We were inspired. I was inspired by these amazing elders I was meeting and taping, and I couldn't help but want to dive into their stories and their thoughts. And Elizabeth had so many important points from her conversations with patients every day. It just seemed natural to pair these wonderful stories with her wisdom about maintaining health.
Yeah, and I have, so many tidbits that I give my patients on a daily basis. But going through the book, it was fun for me too, because I was able to, do literature searches and updates and just, learn even more than I already knew about the innuendos of aging and what we can do to successfully age. So it was a great project. I think that we both learned so much through it, and none of it felt like we just had to sit down and do this research. It was all, wow, we're exploring this area and learning more and more, and diving into things like how do you make sure that you don't have social isolation and loneliness, which are huge factors in decline and frailty and even death. So it was a joyful experience for both of us, and I think we've both taken away points to help ourselves and our families to have a healthier aging as well. So there's definitely been benefit to us in this book, and we hope that everybody will find benefit as well. I think it's for anyone who's older or expects to grow older someday. So really, it's for all of us. And as we think about aging, as we think about ourselves growing older, we have to make sure that we don't have an ageist attitude. So if we're ageist, if we're biased against people who are older now, we're basically being biased against our future self, right? And so thinking about how to reframe aging and not just think, oh, I've got to prevent wrinkles, I've got to, lose that little extra flab, I've got to do all of these things to stay young. Rather, I mean, it's still good to exercise and eat a healthy diet so that you're not overweight, but rather think about it as, wow, what is this new stage of life showing me? And what can I do now to ensure that at each new stage of life, I'm going to be able to continue to thrive and contribute and give back and find that joy in purpose? So it's really for people at any age. People in their 20s and 30s can learn lots. I mean, number one, so many younger people are caring for grandparents, older generations, acting as caregivers. So there are tips and tricks for that, for doing that kind of work. But as we get into our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s, there are still things that I think we can learn from this, and still ways that we can make changes, we can adapt, we can have the flexibility that allows us to do well as we age.
I think the most surprising thing they may learn, and what I learned, is aging is not something to be dreaded. Most people, as I say, are so frightened to think about aging, they just put their head in the sand. They'd rather do that. But I learned, and I think you will learn from reading this book, it's a privilege. It's a gift we've been given, these extra years of life. For the first time in human history, we have extra years. And that means we have important work to do as older people for society. And I think Bill McKibben, the best-selling author who wrote the foreword for this book, talks about the notion of legacy. And I think he says it so well from the foreword. Your legacy is the world you leave behind for the people you love the most. So as I read this wonderful book full of advice about how to stay sound in mind and body, I think mostly of the things we should try to stay sound for. What a privilege it is to get to make a difference. Perhaps a way of thinking about it is no one really wants to be elderly with the frailty and incapacity that implies, but all of us should want to be elders with the wisdom and engagement that name conjures up. The people in this book testify that connection and relationship are keys to making these years the culmination of our lives. And when that connection and relationship can be in service, well, that's a life well lived.
And I'd add that aging is not a disease. So many people think about aging as disability and frailty and all of these things that can happen. But aging itself is a normal part of life. It's just like, years ago, people thought pregnancy was a disease, and that had to get debunked. But now we have to make sure people understand that aging is not a disease. It is a normal part of life that we can all hope for and look forward to. And if we can really learn, adapt, and continue to contribute, we can have a successful aging despite whatever life throws at us. Another story that I really love in the book is a story of Eleanor. And Eleanor at 106 was still out, going to the grocery store and shopping for homebound people. So there's a program where the grocery store donates free food to people who are homebound. And she wasn't driving anymore, of course, at 106, but she was still going and doing the shopping and putting together the carts. And then some younger person would come and pick up the groceries and take them out to the person who was homebound. And sometimes Eleanor would go out there with them so she could socialize with that homebound person and bring them some joy. And she said, I have to exercise every day because otherwise I won't be able to walk through the market and do this shopping that I love so much. And it's just this beautiful story of finding purpose and preventing social isolation and doing the things that were able to keep her thriving even at 106.
Well, I think for my main takeaway, I'd like to read the frontispiece from Neil Main, because as I wrote this book, it is a journey. It's my journey coming through being disabled and learning what are the best ways. What's the best trail to take? What's the bad trail to take? How do you climb this route? And so Neil Main, whom I interviewed, I thought had the most amazing words when I was interviewing him on the Oregon coast. Because I asked questions and he said, what is the gift of aging? Seeking and finding beauty, where many people think beauty isn't. It's taking the time to stop, look, and listen. When you're young, you're so busy talking that you don't spend much time listening. But as you mature, you can learn to stand on top of all that talking and become a listener. You have a context now for all that talk. What you hear is being added to the structure that's in place. You have developed inventory. And as you move through life, that inventory piles up. When you hear talk, there's more reference for it now, more meaning and evaluation. And this is not merely talk and words, rather it's messages that are coming at you, messages from people and from nature. You can look and see and listen to what the estuaries and trees are saying in the landscape of nature. The gift of aging is climbing higher and higher up this beautiful mountain that lets you see further and further each day in every way. The base gets wider and the pinnacle gets higher, and you get to stand on it at no charge, which is the beauty. Life experience has built the mountain you stand on. From here, you will find amazing discoveries because you can see far beneath you. The gift is not in answers, no. Instead, the gift is seeing a much bigger view of the questions, which is just as exciting. It becomes even more miraculous. Neil is 85 years old.
I'm glad Marcy read that because every time I read it, I start crying. So from my perspective, I think the main takeaway for readers from The Gift of Aging is that we all need to start now. Don't be afraid. Find the joy. Maintain a positive attitude, which will help frame those challenges in a way that make it possible to overcome them. There are so many tools that can help us all, and we can continue to make the world a better place. This book offers a lot of those tools, and it offers the inspiration to find your own joy, find your own meaning, be able to find a way to continue to contribute and enjoy life, enjoy your family, make new friends that are younger than you so they won't die before you, and do all of the things you need to do to be able to continue to thrive as you grow into your older years. And I hope that everyone will truly enjoy this book, and we look forward to hearing from many of you.
But there's so many things, Elizabeth, you point out that are good about aging that we can really have takeaways, such as the incidence of dementia is going down. And we hear about the prevalence, which means the total number. Yes, there are a lot more people, but actually the incidence, which is the percentage of persons actually coming down with dementia, is declining. Or that 70% of cardiovascular disease can be prevented or delayed by using some of the strategies you talk about. And that pain is not a normal part of aging, and that neither is frailty. And I thought it was interesting, the studies showing that having that positive belief in aging not only can give you 7.5 more years to your life, it can help protect against dementia. I mean, there's so many tools in here that I was reading like, wow, I didn't know that about aging. I thought it was all going to be lost and handicapped and burdensome. And even people, as we know, who had problems or health issues, they could still say they loved life. It's like, those are the questions I wanted to dig at their secrets. How can you say that? How can you say that?
Yeah, you're certainly right, Marcy. That is a big piece of what my part of the book is about, just giving people the tools and checklists and ways to ensure that your brain remains as good as possible throughout your life. Of course, there are some things that we can't control. Obviously, some of us will get cancer, some of us will get dementia, some of us will have problems, but the steps we take can reduce our risk of all of those things, or at least delay. So if you might have gotten dementia at age 75, now you're getting dementia at age 90, and you'll only have to suffer with it for a year or two rather than needing to have it for a very long time. So many things can help us do better. And that's the things we focus on. Those are the ways we want to ensure people understand they can have a healthier older age.